Hi, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. Our mission here at Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live well in spite of your mental health challenge by sharing insights through interviews, practical tools for living well, encouragement, and courage for overcoming all from a Christian perspective. And now, here's your host, Pastor Brad Hoefs.
Hello, my friend, and welcome to this edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health. I'm Brad Hoefs, your host. Our purpose here on Fresh Hope for Mental Health is to empower you to live a faith-filled and rich life in spite of having a mental health diagnosis. You know, I hope you hear that message loud and clear. I say it every podcast, but that's really what we're about is to really say, in spite of having a mental health diagnosis, it is not the end of the world. And yes, it's no fun. And yes, it's difficult. And yes, it takes work to recover. But just like any other illness in this life, you can have life in spite of it. And we have much to offer for those of us who have a mental health challenge, whether you're a loved one or one with the diagnosis. So I hope you hear it loud and clear. It is possible to live well in spite of. In spite of. That's 3 words, right? In spite of. No, that's 2 words. In spite of. So anyway, I'm just going to share with you today something I came across, and I can't even tell you where I found it. And I've had it for some time on my desk, and I think these are good insights, and it's how to stay positive in a negative situation. So you might be going through something very negative. You might be in a very negative mindset. And these are 8 questions to ask yourself in those settings when you're in a negative situation. So, number 1, is this worth getting upset over? Is this worth allowing my mental health to suffer over? You know, they say that, I read not long ago that if something's troubling you, give it 48 hours before you do anything about it and see if it's still there 48 hours later. And then maybe it's the right thing to do about allowing it to, to work through it after 48 hours. I think there's a lot of things I think I get upset about, and then, 48 hours later, I didn't even, I'm not thinking about it anymore. I'm not upset. So it's really important to ask yourself, is this something that's going to really matter in the long term? Or am I just irritated by this for the moment? And, is this worth getting upset over? Number 2, what is the lesson here? What can I learn from this? Now, I realize that's one question that could be when the situation has been done to you, or it's a situation that you did not cause and you're in this negative situation. And so you say, okay, what's the lesson here for me? What can I learn from this? But I'm going to tell you, even when there's negative situations that you have caused yourself, and consequences are negative or whatever, I used to beat up on myself because of shame. I'd be like, shame on you, Brad. You should have known better. You should have done that, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm telling you, that's not how I do it today. I have learned to say, okay, I messed up. Doesn't make me a bad person. I'm just a person who's broken and who messes up sometimes. What can I learn from this? What is the lesson here for me? So that it doesn't happen again. And that is so freeing. And it frees your mind from getting locked into this self-condemnation mode of, I'm not only caused the negative circumstances, I'm living the negative circumstances, but I'm negative about me. It stops all that. So, second question was, what is the lesson here? What can I learn from this? Number 3. Oh, and this is me to a T. Am I overreacting or overthinking the situation? More times than not, we get triggered by a negative situation, and if we haven't really worked through our triggers and have ways to deal with it when we get triggered, we overreact. And other times when it's a negative situation, if you give me enough time, I'll overthink it. And I'll overthink it to the point where I can't do anything about it, or I haven't done anything about it. My overthinking is causing an inability to act. So it's really important to say, am I overreacting or overthinking the situation? I do know this. I overreact when I get triggered, and maybe I get triggered and I didn't see it coming. But more times than not, it's because I haven't figured out that trigger and how to disarm that trigger. The fourth question is what is the positive I can take away from this? What's the positive I can take away from this? Which is kind of like asking what is the question here, but it's a little different twist. I read a book about I'm not going to be able to say it. I'm recording. Anyway, it was about people who see the glass half empty all the time. Pessimist. And this doctor was saying many people have that mindset. They just do. I took his little quiz on how pessimistic or how optimistic you are. Well, I'm off the charts optimism, I guess. But I usually do ultimately look for positive in negative circumstances. What's the principle I learned? What's the thing I take away from a negative situation? It really does help to look for that because there's usually some kind of silver lining. It might be small, it might be very thinly lined, but it's there. And number 5 leads right into that, and that's, how is this making me a better person? Now, the question is good. How does this make me a better person? Because it has a bias to it. And that is that the situation is not going to make you a bitter person. And I think that's a decision that is in the answer of this question, if you will. How is this making me a better person? Well, first of all, I'm not going to let it make me into becoming a bitter person. Bitter, not better. So how is it going to make me a better person? Usually, you're going to learn. And, as difficult of a truth as this might be to hear, hey, folks, pain is a great teacher. In fact, I would say it's really the only teacher. Because if things are easy and go well, I don't learn as much. But when things are difficult and painful, I learn a lot. And hopefully, I get the lesson to the point where it makes me a better person. Ask the question. Whatever you might be going through now that you consider negative, ask that question. How is this, or how does this have the potential to make me a better person? And the first answer to that question, the potential of it, would probably be to say, I am going to become a better person because of this. Number 6, can I control the situation? If I can, then I should act. If I can't, I have to come to terms with it and recognize that I can't do anything about it. That's the old serenity prayer. And remember, the serenity prayer has a second verse to it. Check it out sometime. Google serenity prayer, whole verse, or whole 2 verses of it, or whatever. Number 7, what can I do right now to make myself feel better? Now, I'm going to say this. It can be easy to ask that question and then say, I think I'm going to have cake. If you know me personally, you know that I have a love affair with homemade white wedding cake with almond buttercream frosting. I find it hard to resist. I fear that it will do me in someday. So I have to really control myself. So that would be my go-to. But I think this question has to be couched with the idea of whatever it is that would make you feel better is also going to be good for you. So is it taking a walk? Is it sitting down to paint? Is it sitting down to write? Is it sitting down to watch a good movie and not think of whatever the negative situation is that's troubling you? You know, what can I do right now that will take my mind off of it and help me get a little space in my head, you know? And then number 8, how can I see the situation with love? In other words, sometimes we get angry and upset about a situation, but how can I look at it with love for maybe the people involved in the situation? How can I look at it with grace? With mercy? You know, grace is when we give something they can't earn or deserve, and mercy is when we don't give them what they deserve. You know, a lot of people don't know the difference between how the scriptures use grace and mercy. But how can you love the people involved? How can you pray for them? How can you think of them from a gospel perspective? 8 simple questions. I'll say them again, that I think are good questions for negative situations. Number 1, is this worth getting upset over? Number 2, what is the lesson here? What can I learn from this? Number 3, am I overreacting or overthinking the situation? Number 4, what is the positive I can take away from this? Number 5, how is this making me a better person? Number 6, can I control the situation? Number 7, what can I do right now to make myself feel better? Remember, what you do needs to be healthy for you. Number 8, how can I see the situation with love? Well, I hope those are helpful to you. Sometimes I just like to do these little short podcasts with myself and sharing insights that I found along the way, and I pray that they're helpful to you. I'd really like to hear from you. If you would, email me, pastorbrad@freshhope.us. Maybe you have an idea for the podcast. Maybe you have somebody you think I should interview. Maybe you're the person I should interview about your life story and your journey. But in any case, just email me, pastorbrad@freshhope.us. I do read my own emails when I receive them, and so sometimes it takes me a little bit to get back to you. Don't give up. So we have YouTube channels, we have Instagram, we have all the social media stuff, et cetera, et cetera. You can find us there, or just go to freshhope.us. If you're listening to this on iTunes, would you please just leave a comment on this podcast? It helps others find us more easily on iTunes. Maybe you need a group. Maybe you'd like to know about free resources. We have all kinds of groups online and in person in 20 different countries, not necessarily all over everywhere, but if not, you can always attend something online. And we have tons of free resources. So be sure and tell your friends about this program. And until the next time that we talk with you, may you be filled with His hope, fresh and new daily. I'm Brad Hoefs, and this has been another edition of Fresh Hope for Mental Health.
You've been listening to Fresh Hope for Mental Health. If you have an opportunity, please review, share, and subscribe to the Fresh Hope for Mental Health podcast on iTunes or on the service that you use. We encourage you to share our podcast on social media with your friends and family. Previous podcasts of Fresh Hope for Mental Health can be found at freshhopeformentalhealth.com, iHeartRadio, Stitcher Radio, and iTunes. Fresh Hope is one of the leading networks of faith-based peer support groups internationally. For more information about Fresh Hope, go to freshhope.us.